Let me hear y'all say rewind.
Welcome back. Broken English 101 podcast, Rewind. This is part 2 of this amazing conversation we've been having so far. This time around, we're going a little artist to artist. Okay. They asked us to geek out a little bit about, what we do and how we approach what we do. But first and foremost, housekeeping. Follow, like, subscribe. Find one of the corners that whatever social media platforms has one of those thumbs up buttons. Shout out to Leroy with all our marketing too. But yes, artist to artist, geeking out, technique, mechanics. How do y'all approach preparing a poem for performance?
Cynthia?
Specifically,
deflect.
specifically for performance, right? Because I think the approach to writing is different from the approach
I want to know both,
to
actually.
performing. Okay,
See, look, you done got yourself digger.
I mean,
Get in
like
there.
it's interesting. I my experience and my introduction to the art form was through a national poetry recitation competition in high school. So it's this competition put on by Poetry Out Loud, organization, I think based out of Chicago, that allows high school students to recite the works of other famous poets. So it wasn't me writing, it was me interpreting meaning and really understanding what the poet was trying to convey through their work. And so I think that's how I prepare for my performances now. Like, sometimes I call myself a mad woman. So I record incessantly in my phone. Okay. And oftentimes, like, I'll hear a word or I'll hear something that I have to say in my phone, as opposed to like writing it down on the page, because if I don't record it and if I don't write it down, I'll forget it. I'll forget it. The moment will flee and never return to me again. And so, I just record over and over and over, because it's almost like I believe in the sound of words, but it's almost like I have to say it out loud before it's worthy enough to go down on the page. So that's kind of like my practice a little bit. Yeah. I love the sound of words. I love performance. And I feel like I have to be convinced of how the thing sounds out loud before it can even be documented on the page. Yeah.
Shout out to you, because I hate the sound of my voice.
Yeah.
I could not sit there and just listen to myself say it out loud.
Yeah.
Boy. Ooh. So I think my start is very similar to hers, in the sense that, starting with the group with Chief Raka, and then, then navigating this high school space. I was on the speech and debate team, but I really didn't enjoy the traditional debate and extemporaneous or whatever, so they had prose poetry as a category. And so it started with me piecing together pieces and extracting meaning and then saying them out loud. Yeah. And while most people sort of read them in a very like storybook voiceover way, I took it as an opportunity to like perform what I felt the meaning was trying to convey. And doing that for 4 years in high school, and then, simultaneously writing and then thinking about it as that oral storytelling. Yeah. So for me, poetry was about the narratives, the storylines, the experiences. And so I think I always write to perform, even if I never share them. And then even like structurally, I think about the story I'm telling and whose voice it is, and structurally trying to embody that. So I think like none of my pieces follow the same format. You know how like sometimes you can hear an artist and you're like, I know that artist. You can hear it, you know that. I don't think I follow anything in that way that is very like specific to me, because for me it's embodying someone else's story. It's only more recently that I've begun to write about me. And then of course, and then embodying me and what my voice sounds like, so to speak. But structurally I play around, and I've done I remember, Scott Woods had it was like a haiku competition thing. Oh gosh. That I did, so I've played around with some structure stuff. But I love the freedom of thinking about structure as something that it's embodying someone else's spirit.
And your voice can sound different, like in different
Yeah.
seasons. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it can be a completely different experience. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what, like, so even thinking back to the prose poetry piece, I remember the piece I put together that where I took 5th place in states was I pulled from Tupac's Rosa Grew from Concrete.
Okay.
I pulled from some Nikki Giovanni. Now, mind you, this is a space where, like, besides me, there may have been like 3 or 4 like Black people. Like it was a very predominantly white space, and so I thought it was very important to share Black writers in that space, right? And so the piece I'm thinking about was "Liberty Needs Glasses" from Tupac, right? And for me, I thought it was like an elderly man telling that story, so I spoke as an elderly man telling that story, right? Because the voices, and I think about the voices of our community in ways in which it can be embodied through the art. It would be good.
No, I mean, I thought of that because I had been so used to hearing my voice out loud on the stage. And then when I got my MFA and was just focused on the page, my voice sounded completely different. Like I'm used to roaring on the stage, and then when I started writing on the page, like it was just this hushed, like really quiet voice that I was just like, who is this person? Like this person was inside of me this whole time, you know? Like, and so I think work can be simultaneously beautiful even though the voice might sound different if it's hushed or otherwise.
How much of that is synergistic with your journey? In terms of, you were telling me off camera about like how you've been moving, and how much of that, like, does your art reflect life or life reflect art?
Absolutely, because around that time I was a bit more reclusive, and I think I have become more so reclusive. So I can resonate with why that voice might have sounded a bit more lower toned and a bit more hushed. It bothered me at first.
But since we geeking out, because I like, y'all have both said things that I wholeheartedly like vibrate with, like you with the sound of words, and then you with the sound of your voice thing. But going back to this particular point, like, how do you, when you were talking about being hush on paper versus you know being boisterous or whatever on stage, like how do you differentiate that voice and what you feel like you got from it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like where did the awareness shift to be like, oh, this is another side of something I haven't,
I was saying, like, it bothered me because I think I was approaching the page in the same way that I was approaching the stage. Like, I didn't know that there was a varying degree of my approach, or that I could be different in that way. And I was like confused by it. And then I eventually just surrendered and yielded to it. Because the poems kept coming out that way. Like there was no other way that it found its way out. And so I was just like, maybe if it's coming out this way, I need to listen to it more. And just, again, yield to the season that I'm in. Because those poems were, and I'll share a little bit of that work tonight, but those poems were a huge exploration regarding my identity. And just everything that was happening with life at that time concurrently. So, yeah. And
you both have published work out?
Yes.
So I have published like written articles. My poetry, I've struggled because I really feel like I come from the oral tradition. And so I don't like the idea, for me personally, of publishing my poems in written form. So I've always done, this is my third album, because I feel like, as much as I hate listening to my own voice, I feel like it's to be heard. It's to be felt. And while many folks who engage with the page in a particular way can maybe extract that, I think it's different listening to the music.
No, I get it. I think that especially later in, I feel like when I matured as an artist or a poet or whatever you want to call it, like that's when I really started to, feel that difference in like, all right, something that is being conveyed on the page, and it, just kind of, I don't know, hitting different. But it's National Poetry Month. It is National Poetry Month.
It is.
And we, have historically as a collective like had different prompts and stuff that we prepare or just kind of participate in. I wanted to ask y'all if y'all have had a prompt that's really like, I love this prompt, or like, do y'all participate in, you know, prompt writing or any type of National Poetry Month like celebration to or ode to the art? Whatever.
Yeah. Shout out to Black Women Rise Poetry Collective.
Talk about it.
It is a collective of just sisters in the arts community who is led by our fierce leader, Barbara Fant, like the amazing Barbara Fant.
She's also...
The reason why BWRPC came to mind is because the collective was created in 2020 during National Poetry Month. So we all got together and just started writing together. You know, I recognize that the prompts this month can feel like a lot of pressure. It can feel like a lot of pressure. So yeah, I try to take pressure off myself. If I can get a word, a sentence, a phrase out a day, then I do.
Yes.
I don't try to write a poem a day. Like I feel like that feels like a lot. I try to honor poetry this month for sure. But yeah, I have been playing around with the acrostic form because I think it's playful. Like I think I met this poet. Her name is Natty Roots. And rather than just actually writing a word or a phrase for every line of the acrostic form, she would give me like full on prompts. And so, for example, she wanted me to write to the word black. And the word B was, what were you born to do? What were you birthed to do? And that could be like a whole paragraph. Like it could be like, you know, different stanzas for just that one prompt and just that one letter. So that's been a form that I've been playing around with. That's been giving me a lot of ease lately. So grateful for it.
Yeah, that's dope. Very, very multifaceted in the levels of approach to that.
Definitely.
That's a lot right there.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that back to the drive. What about you, man? What you got?
So, you know, I've done the 30 for 30, you know, just a poem a day. And I think what that does is it challenges you as a writer, because one thing I've learned, especially, you know, embarking on what I've been doing lately, is the fact that when you don't write, it's the harder it is to exercise that muscle, right? And so the 30 for 30 really allows you to really challenge yourself, do things you don't typically do. Yeah. And just, even if it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's just for you, but just the exercising of the muscle, I think is good. I'm also part of a collective. It's called ACREW. It stands for Artistically, Creatively Recognizing Everyone's Worth. And we're a conglomerate of artists that are not all poets. And so I think the way in which honoring National Poetry Month has been really, you know, connecting with poets, honoring poetry, both through social media and some of the things that we do and putting out some videos, but also recognizing the poet that's in the hip hop artists that are part of our group, the poet that's in the R&B artists that are part of our group. We all write original stuff. And so collectively, you know, it's an experience. And so it's exciting to be amongst a variety of types of creatives and honoring poetry in that way.
Yeah.
I'm just asking random questions
Let's
at
go.
this particular point.
Let's do this.
Do y'all have a favorite poem of yours? And do y'all have a favorite poem of somebody? It can be a famous poet or just somebody, you know, locally, whichever one you want to divulge. Dang. And it doesn't have to be overthought or whatever. Like, you know, one of your favorite poems. Do you have a favorite poem of yours? What's
I'm
the
gonna
name
start
of
with
it?
my favorites of other people.
Okay.
So I got 3 that popped in my head immediately when you said that.
Okay.
3. So the first I'm gonna say is Shamika Moore's poem about her name.
Shamika. I'm with
Love that piece, right? That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
My second favorite is Ciara Freeman. And now, of course, it's skipping me the name of the poem, but she's talking about Black girls, like from the hood and really speaking that truth. I love this piece of hers. And then one of my group members, Jamil Smith, he's one half of the group Love Ties. He has a piece called Pinocchio Strings. And it's really about honestly, like, we close every show that we do, everything with Pinocchio strings, because it's really about honoring the artist in you and every person, right? Like, even the person who never hits the stage, honoring that, honoring, you know, everyone's inner creative, and making sure that we show up and share it in whatever way that makes sense for us as an artist every day, kind of painting our truth. So.
Yeah. Is it weird that like my favorite poets came to mind when you asked that question? Because I'm thinking of bodies of work rather than just like one particular poem. I am obsessed with Gwendolyn Brooks. Like, I think she talks about love in just like a really succinct, beautiful way that I've never, ever been able to encapsulate. And then also I want to honor some poets back home that I did a show with a few years ago. I feel like it's just incredible to say their names right now in this space. We have Emma Ofosua, who's back home. We have Stephanie Ampofo, and we have Poetra Santiwa. She's an amazing poet that's in Ghana right now doing some work in Europe as well. And their bodies of work are incredible, inspire me daily to continue writing.
Dope.
Yeah.
Dope. Do y'all have any questions for each other? I always like asking that question because it just be because y'all were doing a lot of talking back, you know.
Yeah. I think we were asking each other questions and kind of like vibing a little bit. I'm excited to just hear your work. I feel like oftentimes like we hear each other's work in open mic spaces and we hear one piece as opposed to like several pieces, right? And how those pieces might be in conversation with one another, how they might tell the larger narrative or the larger story. So I think I'm just excited to hear what you have prepared.
Yeah, tonight is gonna be crazy. Like I've been geeking out on it like ever since, you know, Atlas reached out, because I was like,
yeah, hey, clip that. Use that for promo. Clip that.
Oh my gosh! And I think it's very special being able to be with you because we've been able to like do stuff together before. You know what I mean? Even just thinking about the TEDx King Lincoln Bronzeville experience and being able to
I opened for her.
Look at y'all multifaceted black woman.
This is beautiful.
She wrote a piece off of my talk to be able to open for me, right? Like, so we've done some things and drawn on each other's energy before. So
I love it.
It's
a lot of synergy.
It's so amazing.
Y'all know that when y'all booked?
Trip Noodle.
He did? Okay, got you. Because I'm about to say,
Trip Noodle. And so I think like,
it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
I'm excited too, man. I'm excited. So, okay, my next question for y'all. Dang, I just lost my next question. I got you. Hold on, I'm coming right back.
Well,
That's
can
why
I
we
say
write these things.
this?
Go ahead.
Raquel, when you were just talking now, like I was just thinking about like the tradition of National Poetry Month and honoring poetry, and then also being a part of really just like, I think this category, this group of artists in Columbus who call themselves poets, like who are doing poetry, who are writing and performing continuously. Like, to be a poet, I think is a sacred thing. I feel like Aja Monet said this. She said that like poetry is the vehicle by which every other art form is measured. And so what that simply means is like, you can see somebody dancing, you can say that dancer dances poetically. Or that singer sings poetically, right? And so it's beautiful to just be a part of this tradition, to be performing during National Poetry Month, and to call myself a poet. Just cause, you know what I mean?
So what's interesting about you saying that is, so our group was really fortunate a few months ago to head to Dubai for All Africa Festival, right?
Gotcha.
And they've never had poets perform. So it's all, artists, whether it be, hip hop artists from the diaspora, singers, whatever. But they've never had poets, right? And I think they were nervous initially because they're like, our crowd, like they want, it's the Afrobeat craze right now.
I'm telling you.
I already know you paint the picture.
Burna Boy.
That's gotta be like a certain thing, right? And so, and we were going on like maybe a couple acts before Muhammad Ramadan. I don't know if you're familiar, but he's like, our joke was he's like the Beyonce of the global world, right? Like he's that dude, right? And so out of Egypt, crazy, look him up, right? So we were like, we just gonna do it, right? And what was so amazing was the ways in which the crowd, they quieted themselves. And it's not to say that we were hushed. Like, I mean, it's this piece called Coming Home, and it's all about the idea of, you know, being lost from the diaspora as Black Americans and returning home to the continent. That's what it's about. But you could hear the audience, like, and then just really receiving like that energy, and that experience was so crazy, to your point, because it's recognizing the roots of all the things that they just had and experienced. And so, like, it was really, really dope. And so probably one of my highlights.
I feel like before poetry felt like such an underground art form. But now it's like becoming more popularized. Like Amanda Gorman performing on the inaugural stage, like did scores for us. Did scores for us. So I'm grateful.
To flip the room, y'all have a most embarrassing moment.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Y'all have a most embarrassing moment.
Oh my God.
Let me hear it, man. Let me hear it.
Embarrassing. I mean, outside of the typical, like, forgetting my words on stage, you know what I mean? I try not to read often. Like, I memorize a lot of my work. And so, there was just a moment where I think I was just like I felt like I was in my bag on the stage. And I think someone said something, like they acknowledged what I said, and I immediately forgot the next word. And so I just had to apologize to my audience and start the poem over. You know what I mean? Like, just being professional.
That's embarrassing, man. I but that's where
blinked. I blinked.
Yep. I've definitely been in those situations before, but like I said, I definitely think that the audience allows that grace to kind of get back into it, because that's difficult, man. Like, you put this time in, you know, into performing, practicing, and all that stuff, and sometimes you get up there and be like, you know what, man, it's so many words up here. The right ones, I'm just
and Christian, like, you be up there thinking of the words, but then you're also thinking other thoughts while you're performing. Is it just me?
Nah.
You're thinking other thoughts. You're like, okay, I gotta make sure and then what are they? And like, you're thinking,
narrating yourself through the performance while you're trying to remember the words you're performing. Like,
absolutely. It's wild.
Facts.
It's
that
wild.
might be why we will have a stand and some pages today. Cause
for sure.
To, you know what? Just
that's okay.
You know what I mean?
There are poets that kill it when they read. You're
looking at me to answer.
You're not gonna get away from. You see, I'm beaming at her all like Cyclops.
Most embarrassing moment.
I'm like trying to think of something that sounds more serious and related to the art, but no. The most embarrassing experience is like, a lot of audiences really love like erotic poetry nights.
Gosh.
And, you know, so like I have this piece that a lot of people really, really like, that I try not to do very often, but people love this poem. So I do this piece in this at this show, and my mother's boss, so was
it the show?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I have 5 other questions about
comes up to me after, like, man, that was an amazing poem. Now, mind you, I didn't tell you the content of the poem, what the poem was about. And it's embarrassing to think. Right? This guy who knew me as a kid, growing up, like all this stuff, right? Like, I don't know what's in his head. I don't know what he's thinking. I just know I felt very uncomfortable. And wanted to leave immediately. I can't think of nothing else. I'm like, man, that's the most embarrassing thing.
Did you know the boss was in the room before you performed?
I did not. And it makes me like, I'm always uneasy doing like erotic work, even though like sexuality and relationships are a part of who we are. And we should be able to talk freely.
Absolutely.
But man, I'd be like, you know, as an educator, I'd be like, I don't know whose parent is in the room. And then, you know, people record stuff, and I'm like, dang, like one of my board members is going to see me talking about having sex. Like, no.
Question for you though. Do you, like, before you do erotic poems, do you preface it with anything? Like, do you say, hey?
I used to be like,
some sexy shit happening.
This is about to go down. Like, please, you know, for friend, you know, and then people kind of took it like, they took it the wrong way. They took it like I was thinking very highly of myself. You know what I mean? Like, you'd be like, and it really wasn't it. It was just the fact that, like, I work in a space that in some ways is highly political. And people will take the content that you put out and frame you a certain way.
Sure.
And now I don't care too much anymore. But like at the time, I'm like, man, like, I had to really think about doing clean stuff. But for whatever reason, this poem, like I kept getting booked for erotic poetry.
Come on.
I'm like, no. So I said, it's retired. And they'd be like, do the one, and you can remember all the lines though, and they'll be like, do that one.
Yeah,
Like,
do the one. It's that one. They'd be like, all right.
That's hilarious.
Why I gotta be that one? Hey, I'm Ryan, bro. They always want you to do the one.
No,
like,
for sure.
Do the one.
For sure. It's because you're talking about something that like people shy away from. Or that people are ashamed to talk about.
And we talk about it. If the people who do talk about it, it's in like very like cringeworthy ways. Like
very
it's never
scandalous.
I think about some of these things, relationships and sexuality is like an artistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people are like, man, like, you make it sound good. Mm-hmm. I think it's helped a lot of relationships. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Totally. Totally.
But if you need me for consultation services.
But
I mean, honestly, I think that's the beauty about poetry. You can share whatever you want to share. Like, and it's a space that you can approach and have freedom to share everything that you want to share. So
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. What's time check?
28.
Sheesh, man. We just been rolling and cruising through that, bro.
That one was quicker.
I guess we can end off with one last question, man. Do y'all do y'all have any final questions that y'all want to ask each other before?
Or Christian.
What?
Oh, final question we want to ask you. Why you want to ask us that?
What you mean?
If we want to ask you something.
What is the
What's
final
your most
question?
embarrassing moment?
Yeah.
I guess mine was the forgetting the words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a long time. It definitely was forgetting the words. I think, so this was back in like 2012. Because I'll kind of give some backstory. It's just to answer. Okay, I can answer the question. All right. So I started performing maybe in 2011. That's when the first time I ever tried to perform some form of spoken word poetry.
Got it.
I was in a group at that particular time. After that show, we did, a couple different shows together. We were just, traveling, doing stuff like that. I stopped performing because I joined a fraternity. And then I was like, doing the whole Greek life thing. And then once, all the parties, all the step shows, all that stuff. After that, I tried to go back to, when I graduated, like back into the poetry scene. So it was my first show since I had really been back active. And it was called Jokes and Poets. It was down in Dayton at the Bright Side. And I got up there and I started saying this poem. And I'm just like, at some point, it just wasn't there no more.
Come on.
Like, it just wasn't there no more. The words, they completely eluded me. Like, I was like, you know what, man?
And it's like you gotta flip it. When you forget it, you have to flip it.
Yeah, no, but that's what it was. That's my most embarrassing. And I that moment has always it's not stuck with me, but it was just me realizing man, I have been out of touch with it.
Sure.
And I need to not take it so lightly to think that I can just get up there and do something.
Yeah,
but that was, like I said,
absolutely.
that was my most embarrassing moment. It was definitely forgetting the words of performing the poem. I was mid-poem
what is
dog.
the next word?
You know what? That's my time, y'all. That's my time. I couldn't.
Dang.
I tried to run it back. I was like, I lost
It's
it.
not coming.
I lost it. Yeah, no, I had lost it
Wow.
completely. I had lost it completely. But
Man.
just like that, and that being the time, it's been time for this episode. So thanks for tuning in. Like we said, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Man, I'm looking forward to seeing these beautiful young ladies perform tonight. But that
And
is
we
Broken
looking forward
English.
to seeing you.
That's what
That
we
is
are.
aside. This is Broken English 101. Rewind podcast. Shout out to Goodly Productions shooting the ones and twos, man. Love y'all. Out. Peace.
Let me hear y'all say rewind.
Rewind.